Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tooele Happy Hour podcast starring Jared Anderson and David Weiss, where if head trauma had a podcast, this is what it would sound like. Today's guest is Rod. Rod Bird is running for Mitt Romney's previous Senate seat. He is, I think you're number 4 in the race now, aren't you? For the Republican Party? You're the 4th one in?
Heck no, I was the second one in.
Well, there's 4 of you.
Yeah, okay. I'll be like, wait a minute. No, but yeah, there's 4 of us.
There's 4 of you. Okay, so I've got my
Don't
count
put me
right.
at the bottom of the pile already.
You're the 3rd one we've interviewed.
Cool.
So we still have 1 more to go after this, if we're allowed to get them all. But you know what? You've got a pretty interesting history. You're a business owner, right?
Yes, sir.
You're a mayor.
Yep.
And you've been doing this for a while. This the politics stuff, right?
Been doing it since I was 34, so 10 years, basically.
That's a while.
Yeah,
Well,
it's too long.
Tell us about your history in politics.
All right, I'll try to be brief, but give you enough information that you get an idea. So, when I got involved with politics at 34, I had taken a Constitution class, U.S. history class, and was feeling pretty patriotic, and just felt compelled to run for city office as my duty, civic duty and everything else, and really had an idea that that's why everybody does this, is to give back to the community, to serve, and I got elected and realized that wasn't entirely the case.
What was the first city office?
City council.
City council, okay.
Yeah. So I got on the city council and had a less than positive experience.
Oh.
And because I was seeing things that was happening, they weren't terrible things, but they were things of transparency, things of doing things, according to state code, according to state constitution, our own ordinances. But I really didn't understand it then. I mean, most people that get involved with politics, they really don't understand. They're just well-intentioned for the most part, at least I thought, and have a lot to learn. So when I saw that situation, it felt wrong, but I didn't know why. And that's when I dove into the Constitution, the state code, our codes, and realized that there are laws and ordinances that actually protect against those things, open meetings acts, and making sure that we're doing our business open to the public and involving the public with our decisions. And so there was kind of a battle that ensued between me and the rest of the council, and that was a difficult thing at the time. And it was probably the worst experiences that I had in my life up to that point. I hated it, and actually had a health issue that I needed to get taken care of, had open heart surgery. Doctor said, get away from any stress, at least for the next year. So I resigned, and I was a little bit grateful, thinking, I'll never do that again.
This was in your 30s.
This was in my 30s. Wow. So I was 36 at the time.
I've seen that awfulness. I don't want to be around it.
Right. Well, and it was difficult to see those things in a small community like that. And like I said, it wasn't super awful, but it was just concerning.
Yeah, you're the current mayor of Roosevelt. What's the population in Roosevelt?
7,300.
7,300.
Yeah.
That's what Grantsville used to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have grown a little bit.
Yeah, I grew up I started out about 5,000, but graduated about where Roosevelt is now.
Yeah.
My community where I lived was 5,000 people, and I had 50 in my class when I graduated.
So we had 70, we probably had around, at the time, 6,000 people, and we graduated over 100 in our class. So I think that's, yeah, but.
He comes from a foreign country, though. They don't reproduce the same.
Right. That's too funny.
They should have a license.
You should require a visa for you to come visit, Dave.
Yeah.
Being from New York. But anyways, go on.
I thought I was done with politics. And then a couple of years later, the mayor position came open. I felt compelled again to do it against, my judgment or what I personally wanted, and knew that I was getting back into the lion's den, and ended up running, but with a totally different approach the second time. And you and I, Jared, were talking a little bit about the fight that's going on with politics and how that's not real effective. And that's what I found when I was first on the council. So when I came in as mayor, it was a totally different approach. And, put my name in the hat, ran, and actually won with over 70% of the vote. And I ran against an incumbent.
That's a big margin.
Against an incumbent.
Yeah.
Too.
So
shared around.
it was an incumbent councilman. So he was he was there and he was running for the mayor seat. I ran against him and won with over 70% of the vote.
So he was an incumbent running to move up.
Yep.
But he's currently sitting on the city council.
Correct.
So he's got the weight of being in the politics, working in the building.
Absolutely.
And you're coming in from, although you've been there previously, coming in from the outside. That's impressive. It's not.
Well, I think part of that was I gained the trust of the people there, because the whole objective of being there on the council and in that position is to do what's right for the people and to serve the people. And they saw that. And so that really carried a lot of weight with them. And obviously that is really what I can attribute that win to. And since then, you can see what we've done in Roosevelt as far as previously, there were a few committees when I was on the council. When I started to bring up the Open Meetings Act and things like that our committees needed to meet openly as well, they were disbanded by that council. So when I got elected as mayor, I brought those back. I actually brought a few others forward to vote on.
So they disbanded the committee meetings. So like even council members doing fact finding, it probably dried up.
Well, and why would they do that? But you're right. So it was an interesting time, and there were some interesting battles and things that I had actually done in between resigning and being mayor that I couldn't just let go, because that's when they started to get rid of those committees, or continue to get rid of those committees, and it was very concerning. And so we have 6 functioning committees right now, including our planning and zoning. We have an Arts Parks Direct committee. We have an Economic Development committee. We have an Interfaith committee. We have an Airport board and a Golf committee. And that's where we get our information.
How does golf pull so much weight that it gets its own committee?
That's wild.
Well, it is the number one largest budget item of the city besides our police force.
Because of how big golf courses are.
It's for a population of 7,300. It's a miracle that we have it. It's been a jewel of Roosevelt, but it is a large burden on our citizens.
Well, the water, the grass, upkeep, the maintenance, the equipment to maintain it.
Right.
That's if you don't even have golf carts. Or
we do
a
have golf
clubhouse.
carts. We have both.
But if you don't, just the land itself. Golf courses are
expensive.
They are an expensive item, but if you get one, you can make it a boon if you can get people to golf.
Yeah, and it's the golf course doesn't break even on people coming and golfing, and we pay for it that way. But I'll tell you, it has been a boon to our community in the sense that there's a lot of fundraising that happens on the golf course with a lot of the tournaments, and so there's hundreds of thousands of dollars that's raised every year through golf tournaments that goes back into the community. That is one of those things that's hard to quantify, but it is a blessing that way. And it's something that we have, and now we have to take care of. That's one thing that I think people don't realize, and they may look at me as just coming from a rural place in Utah, and maybe I don't know a whole lot, but running an airport, running a golf course, having our recreation, we have our own police force. And in fact, as mayor and council, we've increased the police force budget. When everybody was saying, defund police, we increased their budget 34%, gave them the equipment they need. We went from being the, maybe a more inferior police department to one of the top police departments in our area, if not the top, and able to recruit really good people. We have good equipment, have good vehicles, and it's been awesome to see what we've been able to do. But yeah, we pack a big punch for such a small town, and we do some pretty big things.
Let me ask you this: you were talking about you want to do what's right for the people. So you must have some sort of a political algorithm that you throw these scenarios through, run them through, and come out with some sort of an output saying, yeah, that's bad, or no, or that's right. Can you explain your thought process when you're evaluating these kind of events that you're witnessing in the political arena and coming up with your output?
Give me an idea. Give me an example of what you mean, and I'll tell you.
Well, you said you felt something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And then you discovered something was not correct about providing transparency to the people.
Yeah.
Something went through you and something came out.
Yeah, that's a very
How
basic.
did it happen?
Yeah, that's a very basic. So we have taxpayers that pay taxes. And when we start spending that taxpayer money without asking them and giving them input on that, that's wrong. That's like me saying, hey, give me your money, David, and I know how to spend this money better than you do. And I don't want you seeing or knowing what I'm doing with that money. Just trust me that it's being spent in your best interest. Like, to me, that is not right. That's immediately my whole just inside is, if I can't do something in daylight and with you being involved and you being involved, then I shouldn't be doing that probably. Mm-hmm. And so that was what it was, is just certain things happening that they didn't, we don't want the public's input, but we're going to spend your money on this.
Was there anything that they were spending money on that once the public input became involved, that they dialed back because it was unpopular, or
well, so
or were they well-meaning, just didn't want to have to explain themselves as they went along?
Well, in government, you should always have to explain yourself.
Believe me, but it is easy to spend other people's money.
Well, the thing of it is it's very convenient when you don't have people involved to be able to navigate that however you want.
It does make government more dynamic.
Yeah. But government was never designed to be dynamic. No. It was designed to move very slowly, and I look at those funds as sacred funds. And so in this particular situation, it was a project. It had been on the ballot for the county. It had got voted down. It had been on the ballot for the city. It had got voted down, and then it got taken by a special interest group, basically, and continued that way.
Sounds like our high schools around here. Let's just keep putting them on the ballot until they pass.
Yeah. And it wasn't even that. It was basically, well, that didn't go, but we're going to try to find a way
so
anyway.
Then they found an outside source to make it happen, and then they just funneled money into it, or
the intent was to try to get donations. Now, if you look at the project that we were doing, the O&M and everything else was going to be a substantial amount as well. Mm-hmm. And so in my mind at the time, getting the building built, it was a pool. It was an indoor pool, lap pool, and then, outside kid pool. And that was catered to, in my mind, lap swimmers, when our demographic in our area was women and young children. And we should have been catering that pool to them.
It should have had a slide inside of there.
Yes, things like that. And so as we looked at that, and as I became aware of what was going on in the design and everything else, I realized, well, that's not what I think the taxpayers' dollars ought to be spent on. And but it was that special interest group that maybe were lap swimmers or whatever it may be that was pushing that along, and they weren't allowing the public to be involved. And so as I started to get more vocal about it, it got interesting.
Yeah, well, not just that, but lap swimming sounds something like you can sell to investors more than a kiddie pool.
Well, actually, in all honesty, a kiddie pool is going to give you more revenue than lap swimmers.
It would, but investors aren't going to look at it that way.
Well, and you look at the investors, and we won't get in the weeds with it, but there was some bias there. Let's just put it that way. And so I'm not saying that it was a bad project. I'm saying that project shouldn't have been able to move forward without 100%.
Yeah, because
buy-in by the public.
It would have been a project that services 10% of the population and ignores 90%.
At a huge subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the squeaky wheel in government usually gets the grease, especially when that squeaky wheel has some funding.
Connections, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like building a football stadium or something. Like bringing the NFL in and building or any professional sports team.
And you're going to run into that a lot if you're elected senator. I mean, just thinking right off the top of my head, You have the American sugar industry.
Just
Right.
off the top of his head. Something he doesn't bring up every show.
So, are you familiar with how the sugar cartels work in America?
I am not.
It's very similar. So they have a lot of money, a lot of lobbying power.
Sure.
So they artificially keep the price of external sugars from being purchased.
It's a tariff.
Yeah.
And then we create corn syrup and feed that to our
it's a
kids.
tariff that was set up under FDR, the great savior of the nation. Without him,
Yeah.
we'd all be done. Anyways, it's a tariff that was set up under his Farm Act. Him and the what the heck was his name? Ezra Taft Benson,
Okay.
who was the head of the Department of Agriculture back then.
How would you forget a name like that?
Well, everyone in Utah knows who that is.
Right.
But what it does is it boosts our corn economics in the middle of the country, which
That's what ethanol does as well, and
it's
gasoline.
a positive thing. But to have it done through making it so that you can't buy a Coke with real sugar in it is an issue.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because I like to drink soda, but soda not from the United States, and because the reason is you can't find soda in the United States that doesn't have high fructose corn syrup in it.
Ketchup, too. You go to
Right.
Mexico, you get sugary ketchup. You go to Canada, you get sugary
Because
ketchup.
it's outlawed in those. From my knowledge, our FDA allows it. Their Food and Drug Administration, whatever it's
They're a
called,
lot more
will
strict.
not
And
allow
they're strict
that.
on dyes. They're strict.
Yeah.
Sugar's a lot cheaper from countries that have a free market import of sugar. And I mean, we as Republicans love to talk about how we love the free market, but we're the backers of that communist bill as well as the Democrats.
I think everyone's the backer of that in there. That once you start touching the FDA, it seems like that is a huge Gordian knot that I don't think anything congressional has been able to touch for a very long time.
Right. Well, you have all of the food producers and everything else, but you have all the lobbyists, like you've mentioned. What I've realized, and this is again, when I ran for council, and I had that, naive Mayberry thought of, hey, this is everybody's just running to, give back to the community or whatever. You look at it on a large scale at the federal level, and everybody's looking to get reelected. Mm-hmm. Everybody, the career politicians, their objective is to get reelected. And I won't say all politicians, but I will say the career politicians. And how they do that is they accept money from these lobbyist organizations and everything else to fund their campaigns, because it takes an immense amount of money to run. For me, I'm learning this firsthand.
They've got to
It's
fund
difficult.
the party as well.
Exactly. And so you're taking, I don't know if I would call them bribes, but you're taking favors, money from organizations, and then you're doing their bidding, and who gets left behind?
The people.
The people. And that is the biggest fundamental issue in my mind with the way things work in Washington.
How can the people have a voice if you can't afford to go and lobby for yourself?
You buy a lobbyist.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of lobbyists, I noticed on your page that you're a member of a few lobbying groups that I hold near and dear to my heart. And then
Okay.
one that
I know where you're going with
that
this
I
now.
don't hold near and dear to my heart.
Uh-oh.
If we were to read through them real quick.
You're going to call me out now.
Okay. You're a member of GOA. Love it.
Can you explain what GOA is?
Gun Owners of America. I myself. National Association of Gun Rights. Love it. Utah Shooting Sports Council. Amazing. National Wild Turkey Federation. Awesome. National Rifle Association.
Not so much.
Well, they've been a part of writing every anti-gun bill we've had.
Seriously.
Every one of them.
So is it something you think they're doing to keep the fight up so that they can keep the funding coming, or what are your thoughts?
I think they are. If I was to shoot off the hip, I would say they're a boogeyman for the Democrats to point at. That they actually do nothing for gun rights.
Interesting.
You know, God, what was it? 1890, whenever.
Don't feel bad. I used to support
Well, I was
the
going to
NRA
say,
too.
I didn't know.
Oh,
I
no,
thought
I was too.
I was a great American. I was a supporting our gun
But you're a
rights.
member of Gun Owners of America.
Yeah.
So you offset that.
Great.
You know, the GOA was made to fight against the NRA.
Really?
100%.
Are you serious?
Yep. The NRA was sponsoring a bill in like late 1800s, early 1900s to make handguns illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the second national weapon association was the Handgunners of America.
Mm-hmm.
Popped up to fight the NRA on making handguns illegal.
The NRA suggested making handguns
They
illegal.
wrote the thing.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
They fought for
You're
it.
hurting my feelings now because years ago I
Don't feel
became
bad. I didn't know
I
either
became a
until-
lifetime member.
And that's fine. That's fine.
I got my jacket.
Here's my argument. Time for you to get deeper involved and correct the NRA.
There you go.
Because I want to see the NRA become the boogeyman that the Democrats say they are.
Yeah.
This is what I want to see.
Sure. Well, that's what's
NRA
portrayed in the media.
The NRA helped write the what was the 89 assault weapons ban. They helped write the thing.
Man.
But
Well,
you remember,
I'm going to have to do a little research now.
Yeah.
And I'm
So-
usually one not to take things at face value, but I never thought you'd have to look into.
The NRA.
Right.
Yeah, right.
but I am a pro lobbyist person, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think lobbyists is how it's another avenue to get your voice to government, where a group of people can get together and hire a lawyer or a businessman to speak in one voice forum. You know, it's like hiring a spokesperson.
Sure.
I think what we need to change is that lobbyists cannot, that it can't be monetary exchange or something like that. That needs to be a law
I agree.
written in.
100%. Lobbying in and of itself isn't bad. I mean, you look at a lot of the bills that have
How
been.
did tobacco get, I mean, anything, you know?
Yep.
Making it so you're not smoking on an airplane. A
Sure.
lobbyist brought that. It wasn't
You
a
could say
doctor.
you're a lobbyist right now, Jared, because
You could say
you
that.
probably just gave him the EBGBs about the NRA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I
I could have
can't-
possibly put the suggestion in his mind to look into the sugar cartel's corrupt hold on forcing corn syrup down my
Oh, we'll
throat.
definitely do that because
That
that's
one
I don't drink. I don't consume corn syrup. If I can
I'm sure
absolutely help
that one is just to prop up our farms. So you'd have to go after our Department of Agriculture on that one. I guarantee that's where.
Well, and we're all about, helping Americans. And one thing that I think Trump did a good job at, and I know it's a little bit difficult, but you spoke of tariffs earlier, even on this. It's like a tariff on the sugar. But it did push manufacturing back to the United States to a degree. So,
I think
sorry, go ahead.
No, I like it. I think he was onto a good point. I think he went about it wrong, but
Sure.
I think bringing manufacturing back. But I think you do that through tax policy. You do that through regulatory policies.
Sure. Well, but back before income tax, tariffs is what pretty much funded our.
It's what funded the government.
Yeah. So, but you look at it, and being in the oil and gas industry, that didn't come up yet. But my business I've had for 16 years is in the oil and gas, and we
Already
buy
a hero.
yeah, we buy pipe and things like that.
You don't have to sell me anymore oil and gas. I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
So, but we saw how that affected the price of overall material, and it was somewhat costly. But at the same time, it did provide jobs and push manufacturing jobs back to the United States, which I think was a net positive. So yeah, the way we do that, it has to be looked at delicately. Anything that's harmful for you, though, going back to the sugar, that surprises me that we're one of the nations. I mean, we're one of the nations that is most technologically advanced. We understand these things. How is that? How do we have Mexico, Canada, and some of these other countries that won't allow certain things in food, but we do. That is a concern.
You want to go conspiracy theory?
I don't want to
with
go
me?
conspiracy. I'm just throwing it out there that there are some issues that we need to address.
What if lobbyist groups got together at the same time? Because our medical field benefits off us being unhealthy as well. Mm-hmm. And what if they fight for it at the same time? So it's like a business renovation program where we help the farms, we help the doctors, we help the insurance companies. We, just pondering that.
That's another, and I'm not trying to advocate for Trump or think, you know what I mean. I think Trump did a good job in certain things, but one thing that he was striving to do is the insulin. Mm-hmm. Lower the cost of insulin. Yeah, you look around, and we were one of the highest in the world.
Well, but that's true, and that could lead into another question about, you're talking about lowering the price of insulin. That means you're price controlling, or are you going to say this is no longer a proprietary technology? Mm-hmm. Hey, welcome to the competition, bro.
And that's exactly what needs to happen, in my personal opinion. So being in the oil and sorry, we're kind of jumping around.
Let's do it.
But being in the oil and gas industry, I'm a mom and pop shop, small, but I compete with national, companies. It would be nice for somebody to come in and say, hey, we're going to protect you and, make certain concessions, but I have to compete at the same level they do, even though I'm in my mind, a disadvantage when it comes to volume buying and things like that. But I've learned to work through those things, and I've become a better company because of it. And we're lean and mean, and we still get it done. And I love the idea of open that up to market and that technology and allowing that to drive the price. Mm-hmm. If they're going to set the price on that, why don't they set the price for me and say, well, we're gonna support all these little guys too, and so we're going to set this up this high, so they can. That's not the way it was designed. Nor do I think it's beneficial to the company itself. Mm-hmm. I look at some of the big companies like Ford and Chevy that should have went bankrupt, that were saved. How did that happen? Why did that happen? That shouldn't have happened. And we shouldn't have used taxpayer dollars, in my mind, to do that. The free market will determine what happens, because the point I was trying to make is, if you're a business that's unviable because of your policies or your, processes or whatever it may be, you shouldn't be in business, and nobody should come in and save you. That's what makes you lean and mean. So the businesses benefit because they learn to survive in that environment.
They're forced to.
Yeah, and the consumer benefits because they get the best deal, the best service, and everything else.
Let me throw a caveat onto that.
Uh-oh.
Because no one's more free market than me, but we live in a world that we are inside governments, and governments compete against other governments,
sure,
physically and economically. Why did we save those automobile industries? Those automobiles industries aren't just economic tools to provide comfort to the people. Those are weapons that we use in wartime to build tanks and things like that. So you're going to see things like manufacturing industries and airplane industries, things that provide us war technology to kill our enemies,
sure,
are going to have a little bit of favoritism from the government.
I don't think...
Understandably.
GM was a part of building the Humvee, but I don't think GM...
It's an asset that can be taken over by the government and converted into a tank factory.
Let me throw something out at you, though, that I've experienced firsthand. So, being an entrepreneur and a business owner and somebody that, takes things from nothing or takes things that are, not so great and makes them better. There was a business in town that was failing, and I looked at that. And if that business failed, then that means tax revenue, a reduction in tax revenue to our city, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't look at it that way necessarily, but the city didn't come in to save that business. Somebody like me came in and said, I know how to fix that problem. We're not going to allow it to fail because the bones are good. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, somebody could have and should have come along that would have purchased Ford or GM, and then they would have made... they would have built it into something, right, and you would have got rid of all that would have been
fat. Best case scenario.
Yeah, that's what happened with Dodge.
Right.
Fiat bought Dodge.
And Dodge is the only one that really didn't benefit from
Yeah,
that.
I mean, they didn't fix Dodge because obviously now it's built by Fiat, but Fiat bought Dodge.
I was going to say, man, you're really hurting my. I drive a Dodge
Do you?
truck, so
Okay. Well,
I used to have a Dodge back in the day.
yeah.
No, another technology like that is, that we can look at. We're always saying we need to sue these social media sites because they're not operating as a platform for free speech. They're more like a news corporation, and therefore they're violating these laws.
the 201.
But
Yeah.
again, we're talking about weapons of
Well,
war.
No, let me lay out what
Well,
happened.
hold on. Let me finish this.
Yeah.
Twitter was taken over to a degree by the government so that we can monitor for dissidents and
Right.
non-communist type mentalities and censor them and control the people, because you don't want the people to get out of control.
No, Trump won.
Right? Yeah.
Trump won, and all the heads of all the media companies, all the social medias, got called in and had to account in front of Congress. And then we wonder why, when the FBI calls, Twitter picks up and says, "Yes, what can we do for you?"
Right.
Because they got called in front of Congress. Same reason why IBM lost to Apple, or first lost to Microsoft, then Microsoft took a step back to Apple, because IBM was doing great, and Congress says, "We ain't getting your lobby money." So they call the head of IBM in, tie him up for 4 years. Microsoft booms out, he's in charge. Now, Bill Gates learned a lesson. The minute he made a dime, he gave a penny to Congress.
Right.
So when they called him in, he said, "Look, this is how much I've given you guys." And they said, "Oh, yeah, never mind."
Well, and back to David's point, it's something that we were kind of talking about before we started the show. But I think one of the biggest attacks on the Constitution right now, and we're blind to it to a degree, is the freedom of speech.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really under attack with the censorship, with the cancel culture, with all of these things, and even what you illustrated. But we should be very careful and aware of what's going on. If we lose the first two amendments, freedom of speech and the right to bear arms, we are in deep trouble. Deep trouble. So it's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, very much. I mean, all of the amendments are under attack. I mean, of course, the 10th Amendment, I can screech about that all day. That's been forgotten about. The 9th Amendment, God forbid the individual matters.
Well, that's what the government was set up to do in the first place, is to allow for individualism, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness or property. And that's in the 9th Amendment. And so government is only, its role is so narrow and so finite, but it's grown to be infinite. And it's ridiculous what we've gone from when the Constitution was first put in place to what we are today. It's unrecognizable, the government we're dealing with.
Yeah, no,
So
100%. But I want to go back to, like, we were talking about insulin earlier, and how could I know what I think the government could do to set that up to lower all medical prices, or to marketize, or to free marketize them. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on how a government could enable the free market to work better, a little more laissez-faire?
that's a tough question, because I feel like anytime government gets involved, they mess it up. But honestly, let me give you an experience. Maybe, deregulate to a degree. Let the market drive that. Obviously, it's hard because the government was never set up to provide subsidies for companies to do certain things. I do see some value in it. Like David, he says, our what would you call it, national security, and bailing out those companies, the vehicle companies. But if you look at our technology with microchips, microprocessors, we can't produce that here. Does the government get involved in subsidize or incentivize companies to do that here so that we can provide those here in the United States and be self-sufficient?
Was the government getting involved that made them leave here? Because we did. We invented them and we did produce them here.
That's interesting.
And then the government got involved, mostly a state government, which made them, and then the federal government got involved with its tax laws and industry regulations. Yeah. And so they took a look around the world and they said, hey, this little island over here off of China makes awful good toys. Let's shoot.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And it's a huge investment they put somewhere else because the state of California went crazy on regulations in the late 80s. Because up to that, all of the chips were built here.
Yeah.
No one else touched it.
But it goes back to your question, how do we help the free market in medicines and things like that through government? And it's every time government touches something, it seems like it turns into a disaster. And that's why I'm very hesitant to get government involved to solve these problems. I feel like we make good policy, we make good laws, and few, but good, and then allow the free market to dictate that. Government really has to take a backseat role, in my personal opinion.
Way backseat.
Yeah.
Like we should anchor chairs on the back of the bus out by the engine and they ride back there.
Well, I know your opinion of Reagan now, but he said
no, I like Reagan's a complicated. I don't have a negative opinion of him.
Sure.
But I'm a very I don't build up heroes without finding their flaws.
Sure. And maybe I need to be a little bit more cynical or look into that. But a comment that he made that I think is accurate is there's very little or basically not much government can do better than the free market. And so government just needs to get out of the way. 100%. And I tend to agree with that, because every time when government gets involved, and we've already talked about it, the more involved government gets, the more the cycle starts with the lobbyists and the money and then the influence, and the bigger they grow and the more they get involved. And to me, we're basically weaponizing the government against us, the citizens.
I definitely, something I've said on the show many times, our federal government feels like an adversary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that we should be allowed to buy our prescription drugs overseas and have them shipped to us?
That's a good question. I mean, we purchase a lot of other things overseas.
All our prescription drugs are bought overseas.
I was going to say, I think China manufactures quite a bit.
Yeah, but you can't buy them directly.
But buy them directly.
Right.
Yeah.
But being able to buy direct, that's a good question. In my line of business, we can buy, we can buy Mexican pipe. We can buy, I won't say China because I hate to tell you, I stay away from China as much as I possibly can, but Vietnamese or, Mexican pipe or Canadian pipe, or product, we have some of that coming in, and it's really not a problem. I don't buy direct necessarily. It's through manufacturing and distribution, but that does help lower the costs of things. I try to buy, USA or domestic as often and as much as I can. So I don't know. It would definitely make things more affordable if we did. Mm-hmm. The problem is the health and safety of our citizens is very important, but obviously that's a personal choice too. I mean, if you're taking a chance with, a pill or a drug coming across that hasn't gone through the stringent safety tests, I don't know. That's a good question. What are your thoughts?
I would hope the website has a great feedback program.
Yeah, 5 stars, 1 star.
It'll be like my wife is substituting my comment because I passed away when I took the pill, so she has to leave the feedback for me.
I also wonder
That's the fear
about changing our patent laws.
Yeah.
patent laws to where there's thresholds, either a time limit that's restrictive, and then you can't change one little thing on the end of it and extend the patent like they've done with Viagra and insulin and all that over and over again. But what if you did the patent laws that, okay, you invested $200 million to make this, you get to double that, and then the patent dies, or you get 10 years. Right. And then the patent dies. And then it spreads out to generic.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I had a conversation with somebody just this week that had to fight a battle, a patent battle, and because he had created something, went through the patent office, patented his product, and then it basically got stolen or, copied. And
was it copied domestically or?
I think it was international.
Okay.
But still,
which complicates the heck out of
but
that.
it's still something that the United States should protect against. He fought like a 4-year battle, finally won. But what he realized is that instead of being as solid of a protection as we thought, patents are not.
They're not, unless you're in the pharmaceutical field.
Yeah, there you go.
Because how many times you see a commercial, and then all of a sudden the same company's making a commercial that does the same thing. It's just a new commercial, and the name has gotten a little more eclectic.
Right.
That's because they, right at the end of that patent, quit making that product. Put another, instead of a V on that blue pill, they put an X on it. They call it, instead of, say, Viagra, they call it Xiagra.
Yeah.
Does the exact same thing, and then it pops out. Viagra was the most expensive, highest selling, the most expensive, the most profit until the vaccine that the pharmaceutical companies had until Cialis came along. And just because of competition, they dropped the price of Viagra. And that's why I think competition should be allowed. So
I agree.
Let's let the patent offices figure out a way.
There has to be sunset clauses on those, yes.
Yeah, double your investment, and then we're good.
Yeah, but the initial patent needs to be protected, and it needs to be solid. And that was this gentleman's concern. And in fact, it concerns me because I have, personally, I have one patent that I've done on an apparatus that I've invented, but then I have a company where there's several partners, but we're currently patenting, other products that we're creating, and that becomes a concern that it's not as solid and it's not as straightforward as you think. You get a patent, you spend all these thousands of dollars to patent this item and everything else, go through the process, and it's a long, drawn out process. It's not like it's next month I have my patent. For me, the first patent was almost a year, or maybe even a little over a year.
You don't just send off a blueprint and Einstein.
I mean, you have attorneys that are researching everything, and they've got to make sure that they're original ideas and that it's patentable and all of these things. And then you go through that whole process, and you're waiting, and it's a patent pending, and then you get your patent, and then it's almost useless.
Worthless. And then you have to defend your patent if it's attacked, and that's where the big money is when you get attacked through a patent and you want to defend yourself. You've got to have that kind of pharmaceutical type money in order to make it a legitimate method of protection, because the normal person doesn't have that.
Or you just get Ronald Reagan to sign into law that you can't be sued for this vaccine you put out.
Did he do that too?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Anti-vax lawsuit laws. That's Reagan.
Gotcha.
I'm hammering Reagan tonight, but I like Reagan.
Yeah.
I just gotta hammer him. I mean, he released all the crazies onto the streets too, but that was started under JFK. Reagan just completed what JFK signed in to be done.
Yeah. Well, I'm going out of here a different man. That's for sure.
Look into Coolidge, you'll feel much better.
We got 10 more minutes before we had you for about an hour. Let's talk about the border, because we ask everyone about the border. We got to go into the border at least for a few minutes here, Jared.
We kept having a lot of drops on here, so it's driven the live viewers away. So no comments right now. But this, of course, will be up on YouTube and BitChute.
Hey, I can't help it if I'm boring.
No,
I'm just kidding.
It's Facebook is killing us. But anyway, so the border.
Yes.
What do we do?
It's a good question. So I went to a seminar not very long ago. So first of all, I've been involved with the Hispanic community in Roosevelt. I mentioned this earlier.
That whole area over there, Roosevelt, Randolph, they've got a large migrant community,
Sure,
large legal migrant, and possibly a large illegal migrant community.
Correct.
But because it's a dynamic, hardworking place.
Right. So you have the oil and gas industry, like we already mentioned. It's an agricultural area. So you have farming going on, but then you have a lot of dairies in that area. And that's where a lot of them end up, either dairies, agriculture, farming, and oil and gas is.
And with that comes the support of all that, which brings them into motels, construction, especially dynamic construction and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So are they needed here? Absolutely. And there's a lot of good people here. The problem is I don't care who you are, securing the border has to be number one priority for us as far as a national defense issue, national security issue. We have to secure the border. And part of that is because of the drugs that are coming across, the human trafficking. We already have talked about how many, what do they call it, sleeper cells and people that are coming in from other countries.
Mayorkas came out, 2 weeks ago, warned us about that?
Oh, absolutely. And so really what's happening, in my opinion, is you have an administration that is playing on the hearts of the citizens of saying, oh, well, we don't want to be the bad guy if we let them in. Well, these are my friends. These are my family, basically. I mean, that's what we consider ourselves. And there's no one that would advocate harder for them than me. But I guarantee we have to secure that border. We just have to. All of these issues. Over 100,000 people have died of opioid overdose or fentanyl overdose. The problem with that is not only the deaths, but China is lining its pockets with that. They are profiting off the chemicals they're selling to the drug cartels. And then they're buying farm ground in the United States with the money they're making off of the drug industry, the illegal drug industry.
It's like a dog chasing its tail, isn't it?
It's ridiculous what we're doing down there. Now, I will say this, we definitely need immigration reform. As far as, I have a friend who, his mother passed away. He was here legally, but it was during COVID, and so he wasn't able to fly back. He missed his date of when he was supposed to go back to Peru and do everything correctly. Well, instead of getting his documents in order and going and taking care of that, he went ahead and went thinking it wasn't that big of a deal. He's been there for a year and a half. He has a business, very productive, trying to do everything legally, and he's been there for a year and a half.
Yeah. Should he have to go through all that rigmarole to get his paperwork together?
No.
Where, like you said, someone with ill intent, they just
walking across
the border.
And so what is the incentive for these people to do it legally when they're being incentivized by our government to come across illegally and claiming asylum? And in talking with this border agent, he was the captain of the Border Patrol in Yuma, and he was saying that now the border agents are spending, before it was 20% of their time with administrative duties, paperwork, filling these things out for people coming across legally, 20% doing that, and 80% on the border actually patrolling, to just the opposite. Now they're dealing with
all paperwork.
80% paperwork and administrative things, and only 20% watching the border. That is terrible. But the other thing that's happening is a lot of those illegal migrants are coming into our areas, Utah, Texas, and everything else. Well, that's putting strain on our police, our sheriffs, and then you have ICE saying, well, and this came out just recently, but you're a sanctuary state. We don't have the manpower. Roosevelt City doesn't have the manpower to hire.
How do we become a sanctuary state?
Well, that's what was being said, and there was a hullabaloo about that. You'll have to look into that. I'll let you look into it.
But I'd like to. Yeah,
But that's what they were portraying, is that because our police and law enforcement was not willing to work with ICE, that they were going to deem us a sanctuary state. And in their defense, the way I look at it, and this is my own opinion, but it's not. We we don't have the finances, we don't have the manpower to deal with the federal government's problem. And ISIS, they're the one that created that problem by allowing all those people to come in illegally. And now that burden is being put on us. And it's very difficult. If you think about border agents tying up their time, 80% of their time with administrative issues, let's do that with all of our police force and see how.
Yeah.
It's a major problem that's got to be dealt with.
Yeah, I used to be one of those big preachers that if we just do away with the welfare system that's available to them, that'll cure the problem. We don't need to build a wall, but now it's turned into where, I mean, before, we had cocaine and that coming, and if we build the wall, the fentanyl's still going to come.
Yeah.
It's going to come the same way cocaine did. It didn't come through Mexico mostly. It came through water, seaborne or airborne.
Gotcha.
But, and again, would the wall work? But that is, I think, become our big danger. Because, honestly, we ain't making enough babies. We need immigration.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're at what, 2.3% or something? And you've got to be at 2.5
to maintain your population.
To maintain.
Yep.
That's just replacement level. That doesn't allow for growth.
Right.
And so, I mean, if you remain at 2.5, that's where you end up looking like France.
Sure.
You know, and if you drop below 2.5, that's where you look like Japan, and you have a zombie economy. You know, an economy that has to outsource. There's a reason why Toyotas aren't made in Japan anymore.
They're made in the USA.
They're made here.
Yep.
They're made in Mexico. You know, they're made in Europe and in North Africa. You know.
No, and I agree. And that, you know, we're a nation of immigrants.
We are.
And we, you know, my ancestors came from across the pond. They came from, you know, Great Britain and that area. But we legalized migration, or legal migration is what we need to work toward, because we do need them. And
if we make it legal, they stop. They give us their name, where they're going.
Bingo.
We got a track record of them.
They pay into the system.
And I still think, you know, my personal opinion is we do need a border, and it's not necessarily a wall everywhere. It's just we need to make sure we have security measures across there.
I want lots of checkpoints, so make it convenient for them to come and give us their name and where they're going.
So another illustration of this is another individual that I know that lived in Sonora, Mexico. Her son came across the border every day and attended school. And the Border Patrol agents knew him by name, and he had come back and forth, and they were content because he was getting an education over here. It was fairly, you know, easy to come back and forth.
He probably had the college visa, all that.
And he was younger, so he was like, you know, grade school, high school, things like that. But still, I mean, he was a young kid coming across the border safely.
Just a little guy cruising across. Yeah, little kid with the 25-pound backpack on.
Right.
That's killing me nowadays. I see those little kids. We're making some good infantrymen in the future.
There you go.
They're going to be able to hump.
So, but you look at that, and that is a success. I mean, those types of things are successes, and that's what we need to look towards. And having a more, not an open border, but having a policy where those types of things can happen, positive things, but we shut down the negative aspect of it. And we make them come through the legal entry points.
Well, if we give lots of entry points where it's easy to get through, it's easier to watch where it's not an entry point.
Yeah.
We can turn our attention there, where we have, you know, the toll booth over here that's simple, that's quick, you're through it, it's working. Then we can watch where it's not a toll booth.
Right.
If they're coming through there, we can control that.
Sure.
Maybe. I don't know. It's just a thought.
No, well, and when they put on that presentation, it had to work both ends to be successful, and I agree with that approach, and that is secure the border, but legal migration needs to be simpler. More, you know.
And that's been killing us for 60 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's honestly, it's become a burden to where it should be easier to get here legally than illegally.
Right.
It should be cheaper.
Right. Well,
if someone's willing to pay a coyote $6,000 to get here, knowing that you're going to be savaged along the way, how much does it cost to get here legally?
Well, you brought up one really good point. Sorry, David. I feel like we're talking a lot and we're leaving you out
Jared
of the conversation.
just can't close his mouth.
Sorry, Jared.
No, it's fine.
But
It's fine.
What's
He knows it's true.
Yeah, what's happening that I've seen personally, and I've been involved with this, working with that community, is when they get here legal, they're trying to get citizenship or whatever. They hire an attorney, and it's $5,000 every time. The illegals, they get here illegal, but they start in the justice process and everything else. So they're quasi here legally. They came illegally, but they're in the process, and so technically they're trying to make it right. $5,000 every time you turn around, and so the attorneys are really taking, benefiting. I feel, and I'm not saying there's any malintent there, but they're definitely making a good living doing this, when it really needs to be just much simpler.
It wouldn't surprise me if there's a lobbyist group for attorneys to make it this way.
That did not come out of my mouth.
This nation is not designed. Actually, it's designed against it, but that was done away with early on. You couldn't be an attorney to be in political office in the beginning. You couldn't act. And I don't know if you could. You could be legally trained, which back then meant you read a book or two. Ask Lincoln. But you couldn't be an attorney because I think they saw. But this nation, as it stands right now, is built to make attorneys rich.
It's really interesting, and we have a lot of attorneys in Washington. That's part of the reason I'm running. I'm not an attorney. I'm a businessman. I'm a logical thinker. I'm a problem solver. And I think we need more of that back there.
Oh.
You look at where we're at, you look at what we've done, and you look at where we're at, we need something different. Mm-hmm. We need a change. And I don't know how else to put it, but it's the way it's set up. There's a reason why America is in the situation it is, and it's not by happenstance. And it's hard to watch. But we do need good people that just want to do the right things for the right reasons, and really can't be bought or purchased, and those are hard to come by.
And I'm not saying attorneys are bought and purchased, but our legal system is designed to where attorneys make bank on both sides,
and I'm
coming
not trying
going.
to demonize attorneys either, because I know, like, we have a city attorney. He's one of my best friends, so I don't want to demonize them. But I'm just thinking in general, and I'm not saying that just about attorneys, but we need people that understand the law. We need people that understand those things, but we also need a good dynamic of people that understand everyday, hardworking families, and what it's like to work a 7 to 5 job and get by paycheck to paycheck and everything else. We need real people that understand what the decisions that are being made in Washington and how they, how those decisions affect everyday Americans.
Well, I will leave you with an idea of mine, because I do demonize attorneys probably more often than I should, but I do. I know as someone who's in the computer programming kind of biz, the programmers have been outsourced. And you can't protect that. You can't put a license on people who can program in the country and program out of the country. Mm-hmm. And that's drastically changed the price of programming.
Sure.
Now, I don't think that people that practice law or want to study American law should be prohibited from not practicing in America if they're foreigners. And I know for a fact that we protect our American lawyers and have these privileges and practices and licenses to prevent this kind of outsourcing work from going on. Mm-hmm. If I was a lawmaker, I would do everything I can to tear down any type of licensing that protects the American lawyer from the Indian lawyer.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. And I don't disagree with that. In fact, with one of the companies that we own, we do hire developers, and they are outside. Some of them are outside the U.S. Mm-hmm. But the main guy that we're using is definitely a U.S. guy, and he just outsources what he can't handle. But that's up to him, not us. But
yeah, how do you, I don't know.
But I agree with you. The protection is tough.
How do you, yeah, I don't know. How do you deal with that? I mean, it's not just programmers. It's when you call to, you have a problem with your Verizon account or your.
Hey, I do QuickBooks, and I know this firsthand.
I do QuickBooks as well for my business. And
I just, and I hate to say it, but a lot of times I'm like, can you just get me somebody that speaks English?
I know.
Is their first
and
language?
It's rough to say, but when you're in a financial circumstance like that,
right?
I want clear communication.
Sure, and it's tough. And there's a lot of things that they can handle and they can outsource, but it's important when it's a complex problem that you have somebody that you can communicate well with.
The world is moving that way.
Sure.
And eventually, you'll be lucky if you speak to a human, period.
True.
I mean, nowadays it's all getting to where they want to do an internet chat with you
from a bot.
I can't type. I can't type.
So, hey, Jared, we do have some comments if you want to get to those.
We do.
Before.
All right, let's get to the comments.
You're good
before
with
we
it,
do
right,
the
Rod?
comments.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Before we do the comments, I want to tell everyone, if you want to look into Rod, it's Rod Bird Jr. Jr. for Utah.com, and of course it will be in the show notes. Just a hyperlink. It looks like you have what, 5 kids?
4 kids.
4 kids.
And 2 of them
in-laws.
are married. Yeah.
Okay. So daughter-in-law on the left, son-in-law on the right.
Correct.
All right. So 4 kids, lovely family, gun owner, hunter, all the things we like to see. I wish I could have got Dave into hunting, but I'll still have to work on it, maybe in the future. But, and a business owner, self-made man, things like that. That's good stuff. Okay, let's hit the comments.
What do we got?
So, Holly has a comment, and Holly's on the show quite often here. Isn't that kid getting a free education? And she's referring to the kid that's going back and forth.
The kid that was crossing the border.
That's a good question. I have no idea. You know what? I think he may have. I'm not sure. I didn't get that far in the story. I didn't ask those questions.
That's still also a burden on the taxpayers on the other side.
Potentially. And I don't know that he was, but I can find out.
Okay.
Because I know the family well. And I can find out just to see, because I know that is a concern.
And because I would gladly like it down in South Texas, open up our schools to them, but they pay for their kid to go to school here. Whatever,
My understanding is that they paid, but I will find out for sure, because I've heard both.
Okay.
But I'll find out for sure.
Be interesting. Okay. Holly also says, would you vote to audit, close, or at least cut the federal agencies?
Oh, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, let me give you a quick thought that I had.
FBI meter maids? I love it. Your head's in the right place.
So I think the federal government does more than they need to audit us as a citizenry, right?
What?
And we have nothing. We have the IRS. We have all these other agencies that audit us and make sure that we're toeing the line. Where are agencies that are auditing the federal government, and where our money's being spent, the bills that are being passed, the pork that's being injected in those bills? So here's an idea that I had years ago.
Like a general inspector general.
Well, right. But one of the thoughts that I had is to create a 501c3 or some type of an entity where people would, kind of like the NRA, but different.
Go easy. This is a family-friendly show.
Guns of America.
No pornography on this show. Don't go too deep into it.
Long story short, just people would subscribe. We would hire attorneys, lawyers, and their job would be to audit the federal government.
So not only are they not government employees, they are employed by a 501c3 to do this, and then
So, and somebody said, well, that'll never work because and I said, well, why not? And they said, well, nobody cares. I'm like, what the heck? So when I started looking at the Senate race, and this is not something that I ever aspired to, by the way, this is something I felt called and strongly that I needed to do. But as I got looking at it, so I started looking like, well, what do they make? And what is this? And do you realize that a senator seat gets almost $3 million starting out to hire staff? Well, I thought, well, that's
Congressmen get like 1 or
Yeah,
1.5.
almost 1 million, I think. $3 million. I can hire staff to audit the federal government. And I thought I'll hire some attorneys and I'll hire some accountants, and I'm a pretty good accountant. And what we'll do is we'll audit these agencies, but we'll audit the federal
That'd be the
budget.
worst office to walk into in there, just full of auditors and attorneys. It'd just be,
But
just them talking, it'd be,
yeah, but the thing of it is you're right. But to pull out that information and get it to the
that'd be
public,
perfect.
but also to look at these agencies and make sure that they're toeing the line. And definitely, I mean, the DOE, get rid of. There's the RAINS Act also that's being proposed, and I know Mike Lee is a proponent for this, and I would be also. But to really cut back on the regulations that these bureaucracies can implement without going through an act of Congress.
They shouldn't be able to implement any regulations. It should all be through Congress.
Exactly.
Because regulation is a law.
Exactly, 100%. And I agree with that. To give you an idea,
So
we have, go ahead.
can we fire the ATF on public TV?
Help me understand the ATF.
The alcohol,
Alcohol,
tobacco,
tobacco,
and
and
firearms.
firearms.
It's
It's not
like
a-
public TV. Make it like a game show.
It's not a convenience store. It's an actual agency.
Can we like that one there? You know, or pay per view.
Yeah.
I like the government needs to get into pay per view business.
Right.
We could pay off some of our debt. You
Sure.
know, make
Right.
our first pay per view, firing the ATF
Right.
or moving them about. You know,
And I agree. I'll go back to the comment that I made earlier. There's nothing that government can do better than us as an American people. And the overregulation, these bureaucracies that have been blown out of proportion, blown out of control, really are robbing us and our children of freedoms and liberties that have made America great. And that's really what it's about. Freedom. It doesn't feel really free here in America anymore with everything. It's tough. And we need to roll that back. 100%.
Okay. We have one more question.
It's more of a comment.
Yes. Look how much the Department of Defense is missing. I don't know what they're missing right now. I do know that they came out with a report a few months ago. They were missing a couple billion. And I do know that
Missing a couple billion in their budget? Like it just disappeared?
yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah, I mean, there are Green Berets out there amongst the world. That's probably where most of that billion went missing.
But you understand that's why it's important to have
It is.
a couple of accountants constantly
It is.
watching the budget. We need to be accountable to the American people
Yes.
for just like the story that I told in the beginning. We have to be accountable for our public and our citizens of how their money is spent. Same thing for the federal government. They're not exempt from that.
100%. And I think we need to roll back to the 10th Amendment. I think the ATF should be a state by state. Do the states want it?
Yeah. Well, and going back to the 10th Amendment, we have a lot of not only these bureaucracies, but we have a lot of welfare programs and things like that that are administered through the federal government. Let me give you an example how we do it in the Uinta Basin. So we have, and very briefly, we have an addiction recovery home there, faith-based, non-denominational faith-based. It's all driven and funded through donations, local donations, not a federal dollar, not a taxpayer dollar for the most part. And we take care of our own. We just had an event last night. It was a charity event, Cheese for Charity, raised in little old Roosevelt over $250,000
Wow.
for these charities. That's how we do that. We don't need the federal government to tell us how to take care of our
That's
people.
right.
We know how to take care of our people.
How much does it cost for one person to do a recovery mission there?
For that person to come and actually,
Be recovered.
it's free to them if it need be.
Wow.
Well, how much does it cost you? But
I don't know how much it actually costs.
But it probably
per-
depends on
How
their
long they-
level of addiction, their motivation to get off it. I
Right.
mean, there's so many factors.
And let me give you a quick statistic on that that at least impresses me. So faith-based is the key, and also being funded by the public, or not by the public, but privately through donations. 46% success rate. The national average on your normal addiction recovery is 6 to 8%.
Wow. I was going to say 15, but
Yeah,
wow.
46%.
46%.
That's
That's impressive.
Huge.
Yeah, but what's really interesting about that is because it's faith based, you can't get any kind of public funding for that.
Good. So
But
you
that's
built
how
a wall around it.
Right.
A safety wall. That's why the Catholic churches produce the best kids, I guess.
Sounds good to me.
Although I'll bet the Catholic churches still get forced money down their throats by. Anyways, we got to cut you loose. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Dave usually asks this, but I'll ask it. So, you get elected. Can we come do a show from your office?
Absolutely.
After the lawyers and accountants have left for the day,
yeah,
please.
let's kick them out. Yeah, I mean,
Please.
I'm just kidding.
Because, could you just imagine their conversation back and forth? A guy talking numbers and a guy talking the intricacies of law. And these aren't like
Sounds
criminal
like a romance novel.
These
huh?
aren't
Right.
like criminal lawyers where they've got a juicy story to tell you. Like my cousin, these are policy lawyers.
You guys bring your equipment and we'll have
You bet.
We'll have a good time.
It's a
All
party.
right, everyone. Rod Bird Jr. It's Rod. We'll go back to. It's Rod Bird Jr. for Utah.com. If you want to go and donate, want to find out more, he's got a whole list, a whole policy thing. I know people come on here and you guys expect professionalism, and then I show up. But check him out. Give him a look. He's the mayor of Roosevelt, and they're in the Uinta Basin, and they have a similar dynamic to us, but their demographics are just a little different. So go and check it out. Outstanding conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on.